we want to clarify something when it comes to our criticism of the newer Star Trek content. And that is, if you are a production member or somebody who's a part of the production team as far as set building, or whether or not you design costumes, or you do makeup, or if you have any kind of other part that isn't necessarily the writing or the production, or the people, the heads at the top who get to decide things, please understand that our criticisms are not necessarily directed towards you. If there's anything that can be said for New Trek, whether it's Discovery or Picard, is that your guys' hard work has really shown through, and I'm really sad that you don't have the writing to back up the productions for those particular shows, because you all deserve better than that. And so when we get critical of this stuff, please don't take that personally if you happen to be one of those people ever watching any of our shows. All that said, however, nothing bad to say about Strange New Worlds this week from me. But Corione, why don't you go ahead and hit it off with what you felt Strange New Worlds Episode 2 was, or if you want to add on to what I just said, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, just to add on a little bit here first, honestly, look, the sets themselves from a build perspective, the makeup from a actual, like, artistry perspective, all of that looks great. The stuff I think most of us would have concerns or questions about is not necessarily the actual execution, but more the decisions that led to that execution, which is well beyond, some of the very talented people that do work on the show. Now, as for this latest episode, I mean, look, they took two very classic Trek episodes, kind of mashed them together for a new audience, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because let's be honest, taking those two elements and putting them together, look, there's a lot of people that are newer Trek people that probably haven't gotten a chance to go through the original series, and if it wasn't for the fact that they can routinely get rewatched here, I probably wouldn't have even noticed. That being said, I also thought that there was another element that they did kind of lift, and that is there is a book that's part of beta canon where each of the main bridge officers talks about their solution to the Kobayashi Maru. And it really feels like Sulu's situation that occurred to him in that book felt very reminiscent to our young cadet Uhura here, and the situation she was going through. So, I mean, I'm very impressed that if the writers were going to borrow from somewhere, they borrowed from the best. I mean, I still have an issue with the captain having a fireplace in his cabin, and his cabin being so big that it can double as like a galley and dining room for some of the senior staff. Because it just seems like the ship is expanding further and further, and the sets are just getting larger and larger as we go, which I think is going to be interesting, because I'm waiting for like the captain to just be like bunking on the bridge within about 10 episodes. But again, that's not the fault of anybody working on the show. That's just where the theme creators, where Kurtzman decided to take it. So, I mean, otherwise though, I thought it was a really good episode overall. Man, that Einar character, the blind Andorian dude, man, I'm liking this guy so much now.
Yes.
He's just, he's the grumpy cat of the ship, and I love him for it.
I really like Hemmer so far. I've even liked the little bits that we've got of him in some of the promotional materials already, and I think that is a character that I'm obviously going to relate to in a lot of ways. But I really like the concept of the Yanar when they introduced them in Enterprise. I thought was really cool, and I really do like that they've decided to put him as the chief engineer on the ship. So I think it'll be a lot of fun to see. But Chris, what did you think of Episode 2 of Strange New Worlds?
I think the show has a ton of potential. It's just a matter of over time, over the course of seasons, whether it reaches that potential. I might echo an earlier sentiment that the question is maybe not so much the sets and the actual production quality, which so far have been quite slick, to be honest, but the writing itself. I mean, on the one hand, I appreciate that they do seem to be attempting to go back to the kind of episode of the week concept of Star Trek and exploring ideas around, literally Strange New Worlds. What I would love to see it do, though, is reach those truly great heights of some of our favorite previous series episodes. And on that note, with this week's episode, I think one thing that was a bit of a conflict for me as far as my enjoyment of it is I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to have a character episode to build the characters out. And in this case, Uhura's character, to develop them. But in doing so, it almost felt like they were focusing on the character development first and the concept second. Because there was a moment in the episode when the shepherds come onto the screen and talking about the Arbiter and how they're protecting and shepherding, literally shepherding this comet. And it occurred to me in that moment that I'll take an entire 50-minute episode about this specific dynamic going on right now, the moral quandary. What if the comet is actually life? And by destroying the life currently on the planet, it will breathe new life into the planet. And then you have not just, the shepherds are, they were kind of passed off quickly as extremists. But what if there was a really gray moral argument there? And I certainly I would have been fascinated to sit down and just watch like a 12 Angry Men kind of like literally box in one room kind of set piece instead of having the special effects at the end with Spock in the runabout. So there was a little bit of a conflict in my mind there because I would have preferred to see that than Uhura humming, to be honest.
Yeah, and great point, by the way. I really like that. That probably would have been a cool concept to explore and definitely dealt with a lot of the moral issues. And I think we might see more of that as more of the show progresses. I felt overall this episode just felt like the original series, and it's actually because of the Uhura humming that I liked it. Something I noticed is some other pop culture enthusiasts they're out there and they're like, they see, it feels like some fans, and I'm not going to point names or fingers because everyone has difference of opinions, but it seems like some fans just hold on to Balance of Terror as being whenever they think TOS, which, don't get me wrong, is one of the best sci-fi stories ever told, whether it's, and I don't mean just in Star Trek, I mean in all of sci-fi. It's really good in that regard. But then they forget that Spock's brain and the naked time exist. And I think that's always important to remember because Trek has always had a certain amount of cheese in it, and not every episode needs to be cheese per se, but the thing about having all the colorful sets and the colorful optimism is that you're going to have those silly moments. There's literally episodes of TOS. There's one episode, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I remember just kind of feeling a little awkward because it closes with the entire bridge staff laughing, okay? Like, who's flying the ship? Everybody's laughing at their consoles and whatnot. Now, some fans might argue, well, that was the 60s. Okay. So your argument is going to be that was acceptable for that time period, but now you can't accept a newer, updated Star Trek? Go ahead, Corione.
Well, even just more modern Trek had it. I mean, take me out to the station or whatever it was.
Take me out to the Holosuite, one of my favorite DS9 episodes.
Right? I mean, that episode not only ended in everyone laughing, but them like literally punking a Vulcan captain, right? I mean, if you're going to have they not only were joking around and having a good time, but, they also kind of broke protocol in, lieutenants and ensigns, kind of mocking a captain, right?
Well, and that's kind of stuff that you can sort of get away with, coming from the military perspective of different units and different chains of command, and it also circumstance is key. I mean, some officers, and I'm sure John, you could probably testify to this, they carry themselves like just because they're an officer they're automatically awarded respect, and it's like, Well, no, if you're a dick, you're gonna get called out for it, and you can't just be, you can't be a dick to other people's subordinates, and especially like there's officers that have gotten in trouble and even so far as kicked out because of mistreatment of other people's personnel. So yeah, no, that's why it's like under Sisko's command. Yeah, he doesn't mind them mocking him because the Vulcan was trying to prove to Sisko that because he's better at baseball, that somehow made him better than Sisko. And yet Sisko's point was it's not about winning or losing, it's about having fun and enjoying the game. And you're so stuck up you can't get it. But enough from me. Pollo Zapatos, aka John. Why don't you give us what you thought of Strange New Worlds Episode 2 and why you thought it was terrible? I'm just kidding. Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. We can't hear you, buddy. Yeah. See, that's what I love about this show, is that we be so relaxed enough that if technical problems happen, it's not a big deal. Because it isn't. We're here to have fun, and we're here to talk about Star Trek. I mean, not everything has to be Suits and CNN, you know?
Yeah, it's not the McLaughlin group, right? I mean...
I didn't quite hear that, sorry.
Yeah, it's not exactly the McLaughlin group here, right? I mean...
Yeah, and that's just it. Like, that's what I want this show to just kind of be enough casual, but enough, we got some professionalism. So I'll just keep going then. So yeah, Strange New Worlds, I think, is still off to a good start. I think we still got some good episodes to check out, and I really like everything about the show. My theory, I believe, is still intact, even though we did hear Spock laugh during the shuttle portion. I did think that that was because he's in the shuttle and he probably thinks he's gonna die, and sometimes when you're in absurd situations like that, or when things do go horribly wrong, all you can do is laugh, like right now with John's sound not working. Anyway, good.
Can I be heard?
Yep,
there you
John, we got you.
Now you're coming in. Let me just check your.
Yeah, I think so.
There you
Am
go.
I here now?
Welcome to the show, Pollo Zapatos.
Okay.
Now, what did you
I
think
don't
of
know
Strange New
why I
Worlds
lost
episode
sound
2?
on this one though.
Can you not hear me now?
I think I've got it. I cannot hear my other side or hear you coming in through my ears. But what I thought of this episode more than anything was that it felt like a nice jump back into the slow pace, where it didn't really have a lot of like major twists. Like there was more interesting and like personal development and discussion, and it actually kind of did feel like military life, but it didn't feel overdone or oversaturated.
Yeah, I will say this. I am kind of getting tired of every character having a sad backstory. Now, with Uhura, I think they could play with it a bit, and I'll get into that in a second. But I mean, it's kind of, I will say, so this is where the negative critique kind of comes in, is I don't like that, we're trying to generate caring for people by having them have the most tragic of tragic backstories. And so I think it's like we really need to realize that, yes, while some characters can have the horrible things that happen, not every story needs to be, eating puppies, so to speak. And so I think it's a little ridiculous that everybody's now with Uhura. I could see them using that. I could see them setting the stage for later referencing something that it turns out that maybe Section 31 had sensitive information on that shuttle, and so they were actually murdered, and it wasn't an accident. And if they decide to play that route, I'll give them credit for that if it goes that way. But where it stands now, it seems like the Enterprise and Discovery are basically the trauma wards of Starfleet right now, because everybody's had trauma, everybody's had horrible lives, and it's like, don't get me wrong, I certainly have had some turbulence in my life, but it's also not like a conversation piece for me either. You know, I don't just go up and say, hey, how you doing? By the way, my life sucks. How's yours? And here's why my life sucks. And oh, here's all this horrible stuff. It's like, that's not, we don't need that for every single character. You know, we can have a character. I think it'd actually be good if we had a character that showed up who was spoiled and didn't know anything about trauma, and that's when they have to kind of learn vicariously through everyone else. But go ahead, Corian.
What I was actually thinking is if this lasts long enough to give her a second, like, her story kind of episode, they could have it that she has slowly turned the Enterprise crew into her surrogate family. And we create a situation where she has to break a whole bunch of rules or personal code or whatnot to save her new family, because she won't have that happen to a family of hers again. It could actually be a really good setup if it's played right, if they build it out that she views, you know, the captain as, for lack of a better term, space daddy. You know, number one is space mom, and you know, Spock is the older brother kind of, you know, like archetypes. And they decide to go, hey, you know, I have to go save these people. I have to be willing to break my rules to make this work. That could be a really fantastic story arc for her. And that could be like, well, you may not, you know, make it through the academy now because you've broken these rules, and just have it be brought up as almost a board of inquiry thing. Like, I could write this episode almost right now, where we've got the episode starts with Uhura in the brig on Earth at the academy, and they bring her out for, you know, a trial, and she has to explain, I did this because I couldn't lose another family. That could be a fantastic episode that they set up right now. I don't know if the writer's room has the strength and capability to do that, but look, if they're listening to us now, write this episode, please. We know how much, you know, you respect our writer brothers here. So, you know, listen in, get the idea, start writing it. I won't take any credit, just go for it.
See, I wonder if that's not played out, though. I feel like a lot of shows have been doing something similar to that. Like, isn't that the whole Fast and Furious franchise? You know,
I mean,
like,
kind of, yeah, but
what I thought was more interesting, and it's only been made interesting because I listened to a bunch of reviews on the episode today, and it turns out that the original Uhura actress, she wasn't actually fully committed to the show. She felt very like on a main stage, bigger than like any of the other actors, because she was one of the first like black women to hold a major role on any show in the 60s. And I think that someone was saying that that was kind of the backstory that they were giving to this Uhura, is more in the sense that like she doesn't have a lack of commitment, she just also doesn't have a sense of commitment. Like, she doesn't have any reason to love past herself because it's been working well enough so far. And a lot of us have been in the military, and like, we know how fast you switch friends. Like, you can say that to the new guy you're meeting, but like deep down you know that there's like 4 or 5 people within the, like, anywhere you are that you're gonna respond to them, you know, like you're gonna tell them your life story, especially if you're getting drunk together.
Yeah, and also Orville Nation, welcome to the show. Glad to have you back. We're currently going through our Strange New World segment, and then we'll show off a little STO, and then guess what? We got a special surprise just for you, and you can take a guess as to what that might be. Not really just for you. It's actually for all of us here too, but I don't want to spoil it. So yeah, I think a lot of it would just be nice to see like. So, and I like your idea, Corian, where she starts to see the Enterprise as her home, because that's what Pike kind of says. And so if we could see that sort of mentorship, and then we see her grow into the character that we saw in TOS, I think that'll work. And I like where she's at. She's a cadet. She doesn't know what she wants to do. We already know what she's gonna do, and we already know what Pike's history is or what happens to him. So, but we don't know how they get there. And I think if they do it right, it'll work. Go ahead, Chris.
On that note, there was a quote that stuck out to me really strongly in this episode, and it was brought up at least twice. And it's the quote, "Chris, have you considered that maybe your fate isn't written?" And it got me thinking, are they going to really fully adhere to how things are supposed to play out? Or are they going to continue to play into this idea that things can be changed? Will they actually change the way things turn out? Maybe not just with Pike, but with other characters as well. Because the pilot obviously leaned into it, as established, that Pike's future, right? But then they continue to do it in this episode, and I just wonder which direction the writers are going to take in the long term, if they're really going to play with that notion over and over again of predestination versus choice, really.
Yeah, and if they decide to just tangent this show off into alternate universe and make it its own thing, fine. I'm not opposed to that at this point, because then that even, that's what I liked about the JJ movies, which, say what you will about them, and I will agree, Into Darkness was a pile of crap, despite the fact that I like that movie, but I understand what it is. They at least tried to be more respectful of the fan base by saying, hey, alternate universe tangent. This takes place in its own timeline, love it or hate it. And I enjoy those movies, especially Beyond. So if they decide they want to play that card again with this show, go ahead, because it's already been influenced by Gene Roddenberry's original writing, and I do think that it's going to play out more as the show progresses, which is a good thing, because at this point we got to look at it. We already love Star Trek. We already love a lot of Gene's original ideas. We already love the universe. We always have. And so it's not going to, we're not going to change our opinions on the original series just because these new shows are out. Like, we're going to hold true to what we like. And so if they want to make this its own thing and create yet another timeline and then set the Discovery and all that stuff in its own timeline, which was kind of hinted at supposedly by The Guardian in, I think, season 3 or season 4 of Discovery, which I don't have exact clarification because I don't care.
What was the big event in episode 1 that was showing the relationship to Discovery? Was that some, black hole event?
Yeah, so, and Orville Nation says, JJ got too cute with Into Darkness. Yeah, I can agree with that assessment. Into Darkness was just, it's got a lot of great visuals.
My problem with Into Darkness is that is the exact villain that I, as a child watching Star Trek II, saw in Khan. He was the epitome of the Sherlock Holmes type character, and then to have him played by Sherlock from the BBC series, for me it lined up too perfectly. But if you rewatch it with an actually learned mind, that's not the Khan they were actually showing off.
Well, and personally,
the villain
comes off as a Star Trek II tribute film, and if you look at it like that, and then you go if you watch Into Darkness and then you go watch Wrath of Khan, you really see how Into Darkness is just better. Or Into Darkness just kind of made it better. My mistake. I totally misspoke there. It is not better.
What my point is just more that, Orville Nation's completely correct when he says too cute, because, my young, unlearned mind didn't understand the full scope that, was originally being portrayed by Khan's character, because he actually would have been better if he was played by the villain that woke him up in Into Darkness. If he had been played by that guy would have played a much better Khan.
Peter Weller, he did a great job
in
the movie with what he was given. But we're not here to talk about Into Darkness, we're here to talk about Strange New Worlds. John, you had a big question about the first episode, which we'll recap for other people watching. The event in Discovery is basically this convoluted plot that unfolded in season 2 of Discovery. Basically, it required them to go to the future, and so that's when they get sent to the 32nd century. And so all that battle that took place between the Klingons showing up and the Kelpians arriving and all of those other species and all that fight, that's why they were able to find the warp drive technology by observing it from a distance.
That is the perfect nexus point for the new Divergent universe. Like, just like with the J.J. Abrams film, the explosion of the sun created a black hole. They got teleported back to Kirk's dad, killed Kirk's dad. Kirk becomes Kirk.
Well,
and that's a whole new line of it, like a whole new universe. Vulcan gets destroyed. So I think this was their softer deviation.
and that
They didn't
very
blow up
well
Vulcan
could
in the
be,
first one.
because I mean, if you follow Primeline theory is depending. Well, and there's several different versions of Primeline theory, but one that I believe has been that most fans of Star Trek agree is that there is the set prime timeline.
Mhm.
And any deviations at any point in that timeline where there's any kind of time travel will immediately segue into a completely separate reality. And there's typically no going back to that other reality. So, yes, we can still have Prime Trek be just TOS, Deep Space Nine, Next Generation, Voyager. Don't know about Enterprise. But we could have those first 4 Star Trek shows and then the movies just kind of be their own thing. And then yes, whereas 2009 Trek introduces the concept of new realities, then we have that kind of same thing playing out. And it's possible.
I think of it as kind of like if you think about any book and story, you're always technically writing it from the end to the beginning, right? At
If
some
you're a
point,
good
once
writer,
you
yes.
know how you want the story to end, then at that point you are now writing it backwards. And it's so, like, if we think about it, these are like, if we want to really just forgive the writers of this is like very, very telephone gamed information from the very end of the Trek verse. And that they read one of the worst books to autobiography, the captain of the Discovery, or not autobiography, but biography, the captain of the Discovery and all those ships.
Yeah, no, and I really don't want to get into. So going back to what I said at the beginning of the broadcast,
that's
we're
how we
kinda just
can
gonna-
forgive
I mean,
the
we have to reference
complete
Discovery
lapses
when we
in
talk about
judgment.
episode 1, but that's all I want to say about it. And I'm just glad. I'm really glad that they actually listened, because Anson Mount is an amazing Pike, and so far I do like all the rest of the cast of characters. I'm curious to get to know some of them. I really don't want to have to go to therapy to find out about all their backstories, but we'll see how the rest of them play out. Like, seriously, I think.
Well, I think you are missing something about the whole therapy thing. Is like, if you remember, anytime you met a new person, after you guys worked 8 or 12, 15 shifts together, suddenly you guys were sharing the darkest secrets of your reality.
Depends on the personality. I've also met people
Exactly.
that just don't even talk about anything, and they
See, I have
don't
yet
care
to
and
meet
have any
those people.
workplace friendship, which is fine. I know, but
Like, I tend to be more of one of those people, but almost everybody opens up to me after enough shifts, especially
Right.
in the military.
right. And I like to have a reasonable balance of here's all my problems in life, but also here's life itself and how we go forward is what I care about. And that's I am not defined by my past. I'm defined by who I choose to be today, and
Well-
or who I try to be today and who I choose to be tomorrow. But anyway,
That's the weird thing, is like, more than anything, it is, I think this is what the problem is, and it really feels more like trauma therapy, is because most of those stories that I've heard are almost always told as a like a brag. Like, I've heard some of the worst stories I've ever heard were people trying to like see who had it worse. Like in Deadpool, when they introduce each other and they're like, I lived in a box, and he's like, oh, you had a dishwasher. And like, they're trying to talk about how bad they have it. And I remember all the time in the military that would happen, is like, people would try to one up each other with terrible stories, but it was always like more of a brag, which in TV, it just really more feels like a cry, like they're having a quick cry before they go onto the bridge. And that's kind of like the disconnect. Is like people share their traumas, but almost always they're bragging about it.
I hate to inflict this on you as a suggestion, but you may actually have to just watch Star Trek Discovery at this point. But anyway, not that.
I watched the
recommend it
first
on
season,
purpose, but I know I just
and
did.
it was the tartar thingy that just killed me.
Anyway, real quick, Orville Nation says, you guys got a great thing going here. Thank you, Orville Nation. So do you, especially being here to help us with that. And Maria with T and Telly has also joined the conversation. Once again, welcome back to both of you. Thank you so much for your support last week. Thank you for your support again this week. And of course, we will try to return the favor any way we can.
I just want to say, Orville Nation and Maria with T and Telly, like, guys, sub to their channels too, because they have some amazing content and are really, really good. And Orville Nation goes deep into the Orville info that we've gotten. I think deeper than I've ever seen anyone go. And I used to watch Egotastic Fun Time all the time. I mean, Orville Nation is an incredible resource. So check him out. Check out Maria with T and Telly. She's phenomenal. I love her takes on stuff. These guys are just amazing. So, get out there and give them a view too, because they really deserve it. I just wanted to try to get us back on track of actually talking about Strange New Worlds with a comment on CC, your idea there about maybe he takes the road less traveled. They could very easily turn that into like, do you remember the TNG episode Tapestry, where Picard gets his alternate universe? That would be a great finale to the series, where he does pick an alternate solution, but it turns out to be terrible. And he realizes that actually being horribly disfigured in the accident is the best outcome. Like, that could be a great finale. Like, easily argue, like, you could easily hold it up as one of the best at the end of this, which I totally hope they do, is build an episode like that where they go, oh no, I have to do this, because if I don't, even if I figured out every single possible variable, it's not the event that is going to be the problem. It's 10, 15 years down the road where I'm alive and in charge of something that I wind up screwing up so badly that I basically wreck the Federation by doing this. So I actually have to get brutally maimed in this accident.
Yeah, and I think, and maybe that's what we'll see at whether it's a season finale here or maybe by the 10th season, because it sounds like we have at least 10 seasons we can work with here. And then from there, the show can diverge into its own thing, where it's like, okay, here's the alternate universe with Pike if he didn't get in the accident, or if Kirk died or something. I'm open to anything at this point. It's Star Trek, and if it's all Gene Trek, whether influenced at least 50%, I think it's going to be worthwhile, and I am enjoying the ride so far. And I do want to say, yes, we did get we got a nice helping of Enterprise porn this week, and I certainly enjoyed every minute of it. I get it. You're used to my stupid cat on down my ship again. We're used to the slow drawn out angles as the ships fly by, because they were limited to models. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to bash the Next Generation or the original series or any of the movies that had to require using old style models. I actually like what the Orville did with when they did both static model shots of an actual model, and then they combined the CG. I think that's also what helped a lot with Star Wars The Force Awakens as well, was the fact that we combined both classic effects with CG effects. And so it was really cool and I think that's really the way forward for any show, is to try and keep productions that can utilize both. That said, however, I really love watching the Enterprise just be badass in motion. I think it's really cool. That ship has been around for so long. It deserves the attention of having those epic space battles. But also, I wouldn't mind if we did have a couple of episodes where all we do is get a couple of quick flybys, and that's it. Because there's something to be said for that kind of art of storytelling, where you don't have to rely on the ship all the time. At the same time, everyone kind of forgets the ship is a member of the cast as well, so it's nice that she
Well,
gets the spotlight too.
I
Real
think
quick before you say your thought, John. Orville Nation said, sorry, Maria and Orville are having a chat, which
yeah.
is perfectly fine. I'm not trying to, sorry
tracking
guys, I'm not
it.
trying to call you out or make it awkward. I just wanted to make sure you all were there's a contribution to the discussion, but otherwise feel free to chat back and forth. This is our hangout time. This is our relax and talk about Trek or whatever's going on. And yes,
it's
Maria,
actually
the sun is
awesome.
not a fan of me either, as you can tell by my beautiful sour cream complexion. No, don't apologize. Do not apologize, please. We're just
No,
happy to have
yeah.
you guys here.
It is really awesome that you guys are chatting in the comments. That is something that I love to see, just people being themselves and having their own conversations. Unlike most school teachers, I think side conversations are the most important conversations.
It's one of the ways
And
we defrag
you
our
guys
brain.
can have us in our ears while you type. Like it's the same as taking notes. So don't trip at all. Don't feel bad.
I always encourage it too. The whole point, I think, at least in my observations, is that a successful live stream will have a community that builds and makes friends with each other in the chat and on screen. That you come to the stream not just to see us, but to see your friends in the chat.
Yeah, I've always looked at live streams as like the discussions you would have in the comic book shop or in the hobby shop, where everybody is here because we like roughly the same stuff, but we all have our own different takes and our own unique takes on stuff. And if there's a conversation to be had, like, guys, have it, because if anything, it could lead to something really cool coming up for other people. And we all learn and we all get to grow and we all get to do cool things. And I think that's great. So yeah, chat it up. Chat about anything.
Let's keep the politics to like a minimum to none, though, please. We don't.
Yeah.
We
Escapism. A little bit of escapism
we
here.
are a bit of an escapist channel, as in that's our primary purpose here. So, but
Carry
yes.
On and I were discussing it. We're more focused on galactic politics than single planet politics.
Politics
so
that actually matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So no, we try to be, and I mean, eventually, we'll open up. The Writer Brothers is probably gonna, I envision
Shabean,
this
welcome.
growing into a real brand and having more types of shows. I mean, Corion and I are talking about, whether or not he hosts a show under our name or on his own. We do want to incorporate that, and we'll be promoting that in our philosophy. We do have a couple of Shabeed, welcome to the discussion. And Maria says, I keep hearing people being super upset about Strange New Worlds. I wonder if they were surprised, or did they think that having the name Star Trek, people would love it instantly. Boom, agreed. This chat will be effing packed in years' time, guys. Absolutely, and that's what we want to get to. Regarding Maria's comment, though, I do want to say that it goes both ways right now, because I think there's a split between a lot of our other fellow pop culture pundits that and I was saying this earlier in the show, but since you guys joined the discussion, I'll just refresh what I was saying. I'll just restate and reiterate that it's like it feels like some of them go out of their way to hate the show right now. And I feel like some of them are just really reaching because they despise Kurtzman so much that they don't. And this goes back to my comment, my opening statement about people who are on the production. Guys, the other thing we have to keep in mind and keep perspective of, those are people that put their heart and soul into the production of this show. Whether they're costumes, whether they're sets, all that stuff. So that's why we need to, I want to keep our criticisms directed at the problems. That's why we call ourselves the Writer Brothers, because we primarily care about the backbone of any part of storytelling, and that's the writing. And if the writing sucks, it ruins it for the rest of those people. And then, of course, they want to run their stupid buzzwords and all that stuff. And so, yes, I can understand people not instantly loving the show. I see your point, Maria. You don't have to love this show. My point, however, and I think Orville Nation, I watched it on one of your episodes recently, where you wanted to take a more objective and positive look at this show. And that's what we want to try and do overall here, is we want to try and see where we can find the good in stuff. And if we can't find the good in something, then we just aren't going to give it attention for a while. We mentioned a certain other Paramount property based on a video game. We don't talk about it because we don't like it. And so far, everyone's consensus is the same there.
And I think
ahead,
as far as what you're seeing, Maria, in terms of Strange New Worlds receiving a lot of negative feedback. I think what Parker is onto is definitely true. I actually watched a pretty diverse response today. I was looking them up through on YouTube, and I was trying to refresh and just get different things each time. And one of them was from a former executive in the broadcasting industry, and he got really frustrated with how simple it was for him to follow the format. And in my opinion, I was like, Paramount knows what format is. Like, the other one that we don't discuss feels like they have no idea, but then this one, like, this guy's critiquing it for being obvious, but I didn't notice anything until he pointed them out to me in his critique. Like, I really felt like I was taken on a journey, on a fun adventure in both episodes. And sure, it was like, the odd thing is the music. It's a weird, like, they're pretty bold with taking on like fun science in the sci-fi genre, especially with Trek nowadays, like messing with microorganisms and their potential existence in space, and then now like music potentially guiding the universe through predetermined and all that.
Sorry to interrupt. Shay Bean in the chat said, "I'm probably the only person on the planet who has not seen Strange New Worlds and basically has no Star Trek knowledge in general." Well, Shay Bean, I'm going to be honest, I kind of envy your position right now, because you have an opportunity to dive into one of the richest lores in all of sci-fi right now. And quite honestly, if you were to just start with Strange New Worlds and decide if you want to like more Star Trek from there, I think you'd be off to a good start, personally. I think this is like I said, this is a great show to bring in a new audience, but also the writers did say that they rewatch TOS, and even some of the actors rewatch TOS to get into the style of that era. So there's a lot of attempts here being made to try and make this a blend of classic Trek, while also, yes, we're going to be stuck with the modern Trek. There's just no getting away from it. And I do think that at this point, we've talked about Discovery in episode 1. Episode 2, there was like, I don't think there was a single reference to it, and I think they're moving away from it to make this show its own, which is what they need to do regardless. Even if this was going to be somewhat more integrated with the other Trek properties, it still needs to stand on its own. That, in my opinion, is the mark of a good writing and a good show, is something that doesn't require context. That's why I'm not a huge fan of Rogue One, personally. It requires too much context. But, Shay Bean, back to what I was just saying about you before I got off on a tangent. There is plenty of stuff. You can ask anybody here on this chat or in this channel any questions about Star Trek, where to start, where to do. But if you were to start with Strange New Worlds, I think you'd be off to a good start. Go ahead, Corion.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the negative stuff that Strange New Worlds has right now is inherited, right? Because at the end of the day, I mean, yes, this is kind of like the guys who seem to have an issue are making a lot of like fruit of the poison tree kind of arguments, that because Discovery, I mean, a lot of people can argue Discovery was just not good, and because Picard has not been that great, you know, that they feel that this is just more of the same. I don't know if it is yet, and that's I think a good thing. Because if I could have seen the first episode and went, yep, this is more Discovery, I'm out, then I would have said that. But it doesn't look like it is. It looks like there is a good potential here for this to be the diamond in the rough. Yeah. And I think I'm willing to give it the try. I'm willing to give it the attempt to give it to it. You know, in my court of my personal opinion, you know, Kurtzman right now, you know, I mean, he's out on probation, I suppose, because of Strange New Worlds. You know, if he screws this up horribly, yes, I will drop it like a stone. But if he keeps on the current path, I think I'd let him have, okay, so you managed to get this one right, as like the highest compliment I can pay him. So I think we need to do that. I think we need to be mindful of the artists and everything involved enough to say, okay, let's judge the show on its own merits. Let's not necessarily say, you know, like, let's not judge it based on the weight that Discovery and Picard are putting on it, per se. Let's see what they do. Let's give them the opportunity to succeed or not succeed, and see where it goes from there.
You could
Yeah,
take this for.
Go ahead.
You're gonna say you take this for what it's worth. My mom grew up around the original series, and she's got. I would say she has good taste in television and movies, and I know that she's not getting too caught up on canon. But she enjoys this. She tried Picard and all that, and it kind of just lost interest. And her comment to me was she really appreciated that the tone of this new series is going back to the original series, and I think that is going to help the show to have a lifespan. Now it still has to put out some bangers. It has to it has to be good. But I think it will buy the show some time and some viewership for sure.
Yeah, and Maria, if you haven't checked out, or maybe if you're just waiting, John's actually pulling up the first episode of Strange New Worlds on YouTube right now to share that link in the chat in case you missed it. But they did put the first episode out there for everyone to watch for free, and we'll get that so you can watch at least the first episode without having to worry about a free trial, subscription, any of that, and just go from there. I definitely think that this show will stand on its own. It already is, in my opinion. Anson Mount is the reason that this show has any chance at all. Because
it helps to have a great captain.
He is, Pike was already an established character that he just kind of brought his own version to, and it works. I love it. I love every second of Pike on the show. So, but I'm also starting to like the other characters. They're starting to grow on me. I do like what they're doing with Uhura, and it's not unrealistic. So, some people have said, what are the odds that she would be on the Enterprise as a cadet before her time as a lieutenant? Pretty good. I only served on one ship, and I did 2 tours on it. So it's not entirely unrealistic, and if Uhura is as good as what she... which she is as good, and then of course she's going to end up on the Enterprise again. The Enterprise is the best of the best. It's the it's the ship that brings Starfleet's best together, and so that's why it works. And of course we will now welcome to the chat to possibly close out, or at least start closing out our Strange New Worlds, Mr. Brandon Devilcry 3 DC. How are you, and what did you think of episode 2 of Strange New Worlds?
How am I? Ooh. We'll not go down that road on stream. This is not great. My day's been whack. My morning in particular, which John got a picture of to see. I lost my mind this morning. As far as episode 2 is concerned, fortunately, since I was driving around, didn't really have the stream up, so I'm not sure what all was said exactly.
Oh, just share your thoughts.
So, I mean, it was I don't know how this compares to older Star Trek. As I've said before, I haven't watched too much of it. It's been a while since the period of time I did actually watch a decent amount of it. The episode was definitely, I would use the words paced out, if not a little slow. I didn't dislike it. I mean, I still enjoyed it. I mean, obviously, you kind of run into the problem when you're trying to introduce a character and make a point of why they're good at what they do, that you run into a problem that only they can solve. Though I do like how some aspects of that were approached, like the fact that, she's like, we're screwed. Like if we have to rely on me, we're doomed. I've never done this before. This is a first I've ever been out, and we are probably going to die. And Spock's like, it doesn't really matter if someone else is better for the job. Like, you are the only one here who can do the job. So you do the job. Or at least do the best you can do. And if we fail, we fail. So I liked that. I liked that, like, not only did they, like, build on this character, you also are... The audience is also getting to see, like, Spock and, like, better understand, like, the thought processes he is having, just like she is, because you're kind of in the same boat of, like, he's very, especially because of his race, they're very blunt and straight, so it's hard to tell what they mean behind things without thinking about what they're trying to say. So that I really like that. Like, that was part of my favorite part, was actually seeing, like, Spock didn't have character growth, but you saw the, like, effects some of the crew has had on Spock, or at least Pike has had, and how he means the whole factor of, like, he meaning well, but people not necessarily understanding what he's mean. Like, she totally misinterpreted what he had said in the beginning too. That threw me off when she was like, "You said you didn't want me here." That was like, that's not what he said though. What he said, if you don't want to be here, there's people who want it badly, and you're taking up the spot when you don't really want to be here. Like, that's what he said. And, you know, less words, but that's what he said. Not, well, you shouldn't be here. You're doo-doo, like. But
well, yeah. I don't think it was less words, actually. I think you were.
It might have been those words, like.
Yeah, it was pretty close to what he originally said, and I think that was something that really pointed to interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I heard somebody on one of the reviews I listened to today was talking about how at the end of the episode, Spock responded back to Pike, "Ha ha ha ha." I guess in the worst of times you laugh. And a lot of people were like, wow, that really felt forced. Like, they were doing like a really bad write-up. And if I like really think about it, it was so forced, only a Vulcan would mess that up as far as time and place goes.
Yeah, like it in the sense it's forced, like it for that character it should feel forced. It should not, that character shouldn't laugh like that and be like, "Oh, he's one of the guys." It's him trying to understand that, and like he's been hearing this all throughout this episode of, like, sometimes when things are so bad you have to laugh, and it's fucking Vulcan trying to laugh.
Well, like, the worst part was, like, the reason that he was called, like people were calling it cringy and stuff, was because of, like, the timing. Like, as far as worst moments in the episode go, it was, like, the least. There was, like, a minor communication disruption.
He's in a shuttlecraft.
It wasn't. And so, like, he was saying, like, in the worst moments, that's when you laugh. And so that's why I say it felt only forced enough for a Vulcan to do it, is because, like, he waited until the end of the moment to laugh about the total moment.
Yeah.
Well, and we don't exactly see what happens to cause that. Like, the show actually did, I gotta give credit here.
True.
They did a very good job of kind of letting a few moments pass where we've seen him fly off, and then all we see is the bridge crew sitting there in suspense, wondering what's going on, and the next thing we know, we hear him laughing, breaking through the comm laughing. It's not entirely, like, Ethan Peck's getting a lot of flack for his portrayal of Spock because he's not Leonard Nimoy. Okay, this is not Leonard Nimoy's Spock yet.
He looks dorkier than Leonard Nimoy.
It's the same stupid argument.
He's like a jacked but dorkier Leonard Nimoy.
Okay, he's young. He's inexperienced. He's learning. He's not there yet. He's not to that point. And so for me to hear him laughing over the comm, it still supports my theory that when Vulcans are in public, they act one way, but when they're in private, they're a little bit more relaxed. And by private, I mean with no other species around, not necessarily like Vulcans in general. For him to think he's gonna die, and he wants to spend his last moments happy, I buy it. I accept it.
No, that's what I'm saying, though, is it felt like it could have even been that he wasn't about to die. It was just more that it was until he had finished the moment, then he evaluated the moment, and then he went, "Oh, I did almost die."
Like, which feels more, especially because, like, earlier he even says, like, when she starts singing, he's like, "Oh, you're singing. You're nervous. Now's not the time to be nervous. Now's the time to act." It's like, it would even fall into that of, like, during the moment, he's like, I have a job I have to do, and like, even if I die, I need to try and get this job done. And then afterwards, he's like, all right, I can breathe now. Like, the moment's passed, I don't have to hold my breath.
Well, we can even take it further, being the only Vulcan on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And take it as the very outsider perspective of, he's desperately trying to fit in with his crew. And he's trying to blend in with the humans, and he's noticed a behavior, and now he's trying to correct that behavior, or trying to emulate that behavior, but he's just getting it wrong. And one of the Gene Roddenberry, Rick Berman, Ronald D. Moore even era things was they wanted an outsider character that could poke fun or poke holes at the human condition. And that's exactly what this Spock is turning into. Is he's turning into that outside character who's making those, what we would consider, human culture faux pas, because he literally hasn't spent enough time around humans to know that it's a faux pas, right?
Yeah. That's what I was kind of trying to say earlier, is like, it's like that thing of like, it's at least like, even if it's not well established in the first episode, it's very firmly established and made very clear, as long as you're, or at least half paying attention, that he's at least been trying to understand. Like, he's made comments about the laugh. He, at one point when they're on the the asteroid, the first time he tries to console her and give a pep talk, he does a terrible job of it, and then is like, I've been working on it. How was it? She's like, you definitely need to work on that. And then he accidentally says something really good later, and then she makes that point. It's like he makes statements, and there's things that he is insinuating, like he's trying to understand this crew. Like you said before, he's the only Vulcan on the ship. He's surrounded by human and and non-human races,
human
but
as well. By the way.
And let's not forget. Let's not forget that Gene Roddenberry was very aware of the culture at the time of his writing, and so Spock, if anything, is the whitest white guy finally being invited to hang out with normal people. By modern standards, he's the super rich kid that actually paid attention in Richie Rich school and has never met a poor person in his entire life. And he said, "Screw you, Dad, I'm joining the Marines." And now he's finally around poor people, and they're way different than he expected.
they're wild.
That is quite
Yeah.
an analogy.
And he's just like, wait, I'm a professional, and as a professional, that means stiff back, head forward, never make a joke unless everybody else is joking, and it's appropriate for exactly that moment. And you'll probably never nail it, so just never do it.
Yeah, Shaybean in the chat says, I have a feeling that Spock would be my absolute favorite character. I've been trying to understand humans my entire life. So, yeah.
That's
definitely
why
need to
he
start
relates to
watching
the
original
majority
series.
of Trekkies.
I will caution you, the original series is a bit dry at times. I mean, it was made in the 60s, so try to keep the historical context in mind when you watch it. But honestly, I feel Spock's character really peaks and shines in the original motion pictures, though. From motion picture all the way through Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, I think that we really see the Spock on TOS fully developed. And so you'll get a good feel for him on the show, but I do think that the best Spock moments are in the movies. So if you only want to follow some episode guides of what are the must-watches for TOS and skip the bad episodes, that's fine. Just keep in mind, though, if you skip those bad episodes, you're gonna want them for context to probably appreciate Strange New Worlds. As I keep coming back to, yes, TOS is Balance of Terror. It's also Naked Time and also Spock's Brain. And Star Trek in general does have a lot of pretty bad episodes that I would say Strange New Worlds has already beat, in my opinion. Other hardcore Trekkies would disagree, but hey, we are all allowed to have our own opinions, and this is why we do this show, is to share them. So, any final thoughts for Star Trek Strange New Worlds before we move into Star Trek Online for a bit?
I
Chris,
actually
your name isn't Chris.
hear how much people hate his Spock. I was actually thinking during the episode about how I was like, I really don't hate this Spock. I actually kind of like this Spock so far.
He's
I
starting
was
If
strong.
ready
nothing
to
else-
hate him out the gate, and I was
Well,
like,
Spock's
nope,
easy.
nailed it.
It's an easy character to fuck up, or sorry, get wrong.
And there's our F-bomb for the day.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So he's easy to mess up because he's so off from everyone else, but that also what gives that character a certain level of weird leeway, in a sense of you can feel awkward and it still makes sense for the character at least. Like he should be kind of awkward because they don't understand like our intuitive response within like our conversation. It's just like, here's factual information I'm feeding to you, take it. It's the truth. So I've enjoyed it. I definitely don't think it's the worst Spock I've personally ever seen. I don't know. He's weirdly one of the characters I like more in the show so far.
Yep.
That's
Orville
what I
Nation
was
Chat
thinking.
says, I predict you guys are going to really grow in 2022. Thank you, Orville Nation. We actually finally put a schedule today, and all of June is going to be Strange New Worlds, Kenobi, and another show. And I'm looking forward to it. But Chris, please, go ahead. You've been eagerly, patiently waiting.
My final thoughts here is I'm curious to see how much they'll lean into the levity, because especially in the initial scene in the captain's quarters, I thought to myself, wow, this is just a little bit more like the Orville than what I would expect from say earlier Trek series. It's definitely not Picard ordering tea Earl Grey hot, and I wonder where they're going to settle with that vibe as the show goes on. Whether it's going to move away from the really serious symphony playing in the room to just a little bit more like throwing a carrot at the cook.
Yeah. No, I like I said, I'm good with these 2 episodes so far, and we'll see how episode 3 goes. And I mean, we won't hold back our opinions, but I think it's safe to say we'll at least make it through the first season of Strange New Worlds, pending anything monumentally terrible happening. But even if I think it's just terrible, that's not going to be enough for us to not talk about it, because if you guys still like it, we will absolutely discuss it.